Hey YouTube, Kevin Cleary here with a kind of a knife video for you. Maybe this is more of a multi-tool video. I have here for you the Ruike Knives LD 43 rescue knife. This is one of a number of multi-tool style knives that they have. And one of the things that I'm gonna try to remind you of here is when I talk about the specs on this, the number of tools, the size and weight, some of those things are gonna be variable based on the particular model that you get, especially size and weight. So this is a fairly hefty one with a bunch of different tools. There are others there that don't have quite as much going on. So keep that in the back of your mind. So let's go ahead now with size and weight, now that you kind of know that's going to be for this particular model. And some of you may feel like this one's too big and bulky, and then you'll know that there are others available. Okay, so size and weight on this guy, 3 3/4 inches overall, and that's for this primary blade that opens with the thumb stud. Some of the other tools, there's a saw here, and there is a rescue blade right here. These are just a little bit longer than the knife blade, so that's going to change that number just a little bit. Okay, so 7 3/4 inches overall, 3 3/8 on the blade itself. So the main blade here is what I measured at 3 3/8 inches. The handle is 4 3/8, and I did not include the length of that little glass breaker on the tip there. There are obviously a number of other versions of this and a number of other tools here, but this one is 7/8 of an inch. Now, obviously, if you went with one that had more stuff, it's going to be thicker. If you went with one that had less stuff, it's going to be thinner. So that's all I can tell you about that. Finally, the weight on this one, and again, this is subject to change depending on model, is 7.19 ounces. So pretty hefty little tool there. However, again, keep in mind the number of tools that are included within this guy. Let's start talking then about, normally we talk about the blade now. I'm going to talk about a number of different tools. Let's start though with the blade, which is 12C27. Sorry guys, I don't know why I couldn't spit that out. 12C27 on the blade. That is a Sandvik steel. And unless I'm correct, if I'm looking correctly at the website, that is the steel on all of their multi-tool style knives, okay? And it's a decent steel. It's not the most amazing thing you're ever gonna come across, but for the purpose of this tool, I think it's gonna be quite good. And I would actually suggest to you that it's going to be better than a lot of similar tools from other companies, okay? You don't see a lot of these kind of tools with high-end steels outside of, some of the Leatherman or Gerber multi-tools that specifically have upgraded the steel. All right, so let's quickly talk about then some of the other tools that this has. There is a clip here, and let's just quickly open them up, and I can talk about them all without sort of opening and closing, ouch, without opening and closing each one. I'm gonna need a little tool here to get this guy out. Talk about that in a second. There we go. So those are the other 3 tools that are in this side. There's a clip here. Now I'm just gonna go on record and say I don't like the clip. I feel like just about anything in that spot would have been a better use of space, but that's just fine. I know they're thinking that a lot of firefighters, and you will see even me have stuff hanging off of my bunker gear. There are a couple places where I can clip stuff on. Usually it's a tick camera or something like that. But there is the potential, I guess, that this could go there. I wouldn't carry a tool that way. I always carry my tools, pipe wrenches and stuff, hose wrenches and stuff like that in my pocket. So that's where this would go. Screwdriver, cap lifter, a couple like wire tools here, saw, and rescue knife. Okay, now I will roll in right here. There you go. A quick picture of all of the different tools open with a description. So you can go back and pause that and look at every one. There are a couple of tools over on this side as well. And I do need a tool to, open the tools, okay? And that's one of the things that I'm not crazy about, but is also something that I've found to be the case in many of this style tools. So here we have a Phillips screwdriver and an awl. Okay, so we've looked at all the tools. I'm not going to get them all out again because you could see that it was a bit of a pain in the neck. However, I will say I've done a bit of cutting and a bit of, testing with all of them and had no issues. Now, I carried this around with me on my person for a while to sort of do that testing, and I didn't have occasion to use all of them a lot. Okay, a slot screwdriver, yeah, you use that all the time, and so I've pried on a few things and scraped a few things with a slot screwdriver. I purposely used the Phillips screwdriver, even though I could have used an actual screwdriver a few times, and it worked fine. I don't have any complaints about it. I also used the awl to make to adjust a leather belt that was mine that my son wanted to use, and since he's a lot smaller, I used this. I cut it down to a shorter length and then put some new holes in it with the awl. So I have used pretty well everything on here and have no big complaints about it, other than it's a multi-tool, okay? So that limitation that these tools have are going to be found, on this or, this or just about any other multi-tool you could come up with. That's the sacrifice you make. You carry a multi-tool that can do a lot of things, but it's not particularly good at any of them, okay? So all the tools are definitely functional, and I have found this pretty handy to have around. Let's talk about, now that we've kind of got past the tools, you can see what's there, and I will just tell you, I have used them all and they seem to all work, but not as well as an actual screwdriver or an actual saw, okay? And I think that's pretty much expected at this point when you kind of just take a look at the size of this, okay? So, lockup and deployment. Well, this is a slip joint, and it is a pretty stiff slip joint. So some of the tools where I've got a lot of length and I can really get a hold of it, something like this cutting tool, I can get this out and use it without too much difficulty. I've tried this, by the way, with medical gloves on, and it works okay. With fire gloves, you're not going to open any of these. You have to take your gloves off. But guess what? That's true of this or just about any other multi-tool. In fact, even getting my pack to work right, I often have to take my gloves off to do that. So in terms of using this as a rescue tool, with medical gloves, it does work fine. With heavier gloves, you're probably going to have to take your gloves off to access whatever tool you're trying to use. And that's pretty standard. Okay, I think we're used to that. And it's going to be as bad, or in fact, it's going to be a little better, I would say, than the Swiss Army knife. So now that we've talked about that, let's point out that this does have the same challenge that I've had with a Swiss Army knife, and that is, to get this slot screwdriver out with this nail nick, this has a very positive lock, okay? So that spring is quite stiff, and getting this tool out to use is a little tough, and there's no way I'm getting this out with my fingernail. It just is not going to happen. The same is true of the tools over on this side, and it's really just the shorter tools that I have the issue with. If I try to demonstrate this for you right now, I can kind of get that out. If I switch over to the awl, there's no way in the world I'm getting that awl out with my thumb. I've got to use the pry tool on my keychain, and even then, there you go. It's tough, okay? So very positive spring, which is useful when the tool is when you're, actively doing something with the tool. But of course, not so useful when you're trying to get the silly thing open. The thumb stud does work well, and so if we talk about lockup and deployment on this particular one, the thumb stud works well on the blade, and I can easily deploy the blade one-handed with gloves or without. There is one little weak point here, and that is if you look at the liner lock, it is 100% engaged here, and with that comes a little bit of up and down blade play, which I'm not a fan of. You guys know how I feel about that. I would have been just as happy with this just as a slip joint. Okay, this one is a slip joint, and I have no big complaint about that. It's kind of what you expect. Okay, now I will say this. I know we're not to comparison yet, but I do like the size of the tools on this over your typical Swiss Army knife. All right, so I'll get this back out in a second, but I do want to point out, while we're talking about lockup and deployment, I have a lot of the same issues getting anything out of this as I do getting anything out of that. All right, so lockup and deployment, very stiff back springs, which makes sense in use, but can be a little awkward when you're trying to use the tool, because at least for me, I need a tool to get the tools open. And the same is true for this guy, all right? Let's go ahead now. and point out, oh yeah, let's do handle construction first. So the handle construction, again, is something I do like. This is a fairly large knife, fairly stiff back springs. If you look carefully around everything that's going on here, it is really clean, okay? The quality is definitely there. And this does not feel like, you know, I think all of us have gotten, you know, maybe won it at a golf tournament or been given, you know, a cheap multi-tool style knife, because there's tons of them out there made in China that are just total garbage. And this definitely is not one of those. This is every bit on point in terms of quality as your typical Swiss Army knife. In fact, I would say it's probably even a little bit better than that. So construction, I think, is very well done. It is, you can see that there are Torx bit here, and that is a big advantage over something like this, where, you know, you're just not going to take this apart very easily. And that's probably as it should be, considering the people using Swiss Army knives. It's nice to see that I at least have the option, though, with the rake equivalent here. Now, in terms of comfort and grippiness and all of that, it's good, okay? I like the larger size, but it does suffer from the challenges of any multi-tool, okay? Because you've got a bunch of stuff attached to this handle, right? Think of this for yourself. If you're using the screwdriver here, hold on. If you're using the screwdriver here, right, is it easier to do this? Or is it easier to just go to the drawer and get a Phillips screwdriver? The answer is obvious, right? It's definitely going to be easier to use a screwdriver. So when I'm talking about ergonomics here, oh, by the way, I totally forgot a tool. There is a pair of tweezers here, and these are really nice tweezers. They're much better than what you're typically going to find in a tool like this. So back to our focus. This is going to be more difficult and more awkward than just getting a screwdriver, right? And that's the nature of a multi-tool. Now, on the other hand, if we're just talking about the knife itself, then I find this handle to be quite comfortable. I can really grip it. I have no issue whatsoever with just the use on this. By the way, warning, fair warning here, if you're shutting this, that back spring is pretty stiff. Use two hands, okay? Trying to do this and shut it with this finger, I would never do that. You're just asking for a bad cut, okay? Okay, so I think we've pretty much covered everything. Construction is good, quality is good, ergonomics is good within limits. It's still a multi-tool, right? It doesn't automatically transform into a perfectly good saw or screwdriver or whatever else you're using it for, okay? But otherwise, in terms of, you know, a knife handle, absolutely fine, very comfortable. Let's pull in some comparisons here. The first one being the obvious Swiss Army knife. Now, I'm not going to open all of these tools, and that's because this is a Swiss Champ, which is really not a good representation of a Swiss Army knife. It's stupidly thick, okay? This would even be a better representation of a Swiss Army knife than this would. But it does have you know, kind of get the idea across. So you can see that this is much bigger than your standard Swiss Army knife. And that, I think, is a real win. That makes the handle much more comfortable, and it allows me to have larger tools than I would on the Swiss Army knife. Okay, so that I'm absolutely very happy with. Let's grab a couple of other multi-tools though, and I do want to bring these in, even though it's a little unfair. So I've got here the Gerber 600 plier tool, and it does have some blades and stuff back here. Now these tools are not very big. You can see the blade here is smaller than the blade on there, but all the tools do lock, and I can get at any of these tools I want without any difficulty. I don't need a tool to open my tool, and I do think that is one area where these plier style multi-tools are generally superior. Here's the Gerber Signal. By the way, I don't have it with me, but in my bunker gear, I actually carry the Gerber OHT, all right? And I find that to be quite good and quite simple to operate, which is why I have it in there. So Gerber Signal is one of my favorite multi-tools out there. And again, I can pretty much utilize all of the tools on here without too much difficulty. Again though, let me demonstrate. Look at how late the lockup is on this. It just seems to be a thing with multi-tools, and there is maybe a little bit of blade play. Not quite to the extent of this one, but it is there. So, I do want to do a full video where I kind of do a comparison between these two types of tools. I need a couple other examples before I get to that. But how does this compare as a multi-tool, as a knife? I think if you're looking for a tool you're going to put in your pocket, carry around all the time, this is probably a little big, but one of the versions of this I think would work very, very well for most people. I really do. The quality is definitely there, and it does give you the versatility of having a few other tools available to you. Now, am I going to stop my typical carry, which is something like this, you know, and start carrying a knife like this? No, I'm not. I just don't have enough purpose for it. And I have organized my life in such a way that I always have a multi-tool at close proximity. Now that does help with this. So I would put this in a survival kit. I would put it in my backpack. I would put it in a, you know, an EDC type of bag, because then there is, you know, that I would find to be a little more legitimate use for it, especially considering the size and weight on it. All right, so there you go, guys. That's my take on the Ruike Knives LD43 rescue knife. I think it's a useful tool. I think it stands up as well as any sort of multi-bladed knife style multi-tool. I don't think, you know, and well, actually, let me rephrase that. I think this is better than a lot of multi-bladed tools like this that are out there. The quality is definitely there. It's nice to see the Sandvik steel on that. So I would definitely, you know, if you're looking for something like that, I would absolutely recommend it. Now for me, I'm probably, again, not going to start carrying this in my pocket. By the way, it does have a clip, so you do have that option, but this particular one is too thick. I would probably be more inclined to carry one that's maybe 2 or 3 sectioned rather than the 4 sections here, which makes it pretty hefty and pretty thick at 7/8 of an inch. All right, of course I would definitely be more inclined to carry this than this. And in fact, in pocket, I would be more inclined to carry it even than this, because these, I don't carry them in pocket. These are a bag tool for me. All right, so there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. I would love to know your thoughts. How many of you out there carry a knife like this rather than something like this? You know, I can imagine, or by the way, something like this. So I would like to hear your guys' thoughts on sort of this style multi-tool versus this style multi-tool. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.